Good way to start your Monday morning, I reckon. So it's been a big week in geopolitics. It's hard to get too fired up about Australian politics at the moment when you see what's going on in the US. Hard to take your eyes away from it. It's an ongoing train wreck. Anyway, I wanted to read out to you an excerpt from a speech that Bernie Sanders made to the Senate last week, because I think, it's a great speech. I think Bernie Sanders is a lone voice in the left's political wilderness in the US, standing up for the working class, standing up against inequality, the huge inequality in the US. So I thought I'd give it a try. I'm going to read this speech here. I'm going to play a bit of background music as we do this. So it's a bit of an experiment. I'm going to play you a song called Chasm by Tony Anderson. Just going to see if this is going to work for us. So, here we are. This is a speech by Bernie Sanders. We've got the music coming in. There we go. Don't want it too loud. Never done this before. Okay. So, a speech by Bernie Sanders to the US Senate last week. Here we go. In the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to travel in many parts of our country. And I've been able to talk to folks in Nebraska, in Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona. And what I'm hearing from in all of these states, and in fact all over the country, is that our nation right now faces enormous crises. Unprecedented crises in the modern history of our country. And how right now, at this moment, we respond to these crises will not only impact our lives, it will impact the lives of our kids and future generations. And in terms of climate change, the well-being of the entire planet. What I have to tell you is that the American people are angry at what is happening here in Washington, D.C., and they are prepared to stand up and fight back. In my view, and what I've heard from many, many people, is that they will not accept an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control our government, where the wealthiest person on earth, Mr. Musk, is running all over Washington, D.C., slashing the Social Security Administration so that our elderly people today are finding it extremely difficult to access the benefits they paid into. Where Mr. Musk and his friends are slashing the Veterans Administration so that people who put their lives on the line to defend us will not be able to get the health care that they're entitled to. Slashing the Department of Education, slashing US aid. And why is all this slashing taking place? It's taking place so that the wealthiest people in the country can receive over $1 trillion in tax breaks. Now, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. There are very few people in this country who think that you slash programs that working families desperately need in order to give tax breaks to billionaires. But it's not just the movement toward oligarchy which is outraging millions of Americans, Democrats and Republicans, by the way. And it's not just the movement towards authoritarianism that we are seeing. The American people are saying as loudly as they can that they will not accept a society of massive economic and wealth inequalities, where the very richest people in our country are becoming much richer while working families are struggling to put food on the table. Having gone all over this country, I can tell you that the American people are sick and tired of these inequalities, and they want an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. But let's do something, fairly radical today. Let's try and tell the truth, the real truth about what is going on in our society today. Something that we don't talk about too much here in the Senate. We don't talk about it too much in the House. We don't talk about it too much in the corporate media. But the reality is that today we have two Americas, two very, very different Americas. In one of those Americas, the wealthiest people have never had it so good. In the whole history of our country, the people on top have never, ever had it so good as they have it today. Today we have more income and wealth inequality than there ever has been in the history of America. Now I know we don't discuss it, you don't see much of it on TV, you don't hear it talked about here at all. But the American people do not believe that it is appropriate for three people. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg. 3 Americans own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. 170 million people. Really? 3 people own more wealth than 170 million people. Anybody here think it's vaguely appropriate? And by the way, those very same 3 people, the 3 richest people in America, were right there at Trump's inauguration, standing right behind the president. So, you want to know what oligarchy is? I know there's some confusion out there. What is oligarchy? Well, it starts off when you have the 3 wealthiest people in the country standing right behind the president when he gets inaugurated. The top 1% in our country now own more wealth than the bottom 90%. Maybe we want to be talking about that. And in our America today, in that top America, that one America, the 1%, are completely separate and isolated from the rest of the country. You think they get on a subway to get to work? Think they sit in a traffic jam for an hour trying to get to work? Not the case. They fly around in jets and helicopters that they own. They live in their mansions all over the world in their gated communities. They have nannies taking care of their babies. They don't worry about the cost of childcare. And they send their kids to the best private schools and colleges. That is one America. People on top doing phenomenally well. Not only do they have the economic power, they have enormous political power. That's what's going on here. They live like kings. That's one America. But there is another America. And then in that other America, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And millions of workers from one end of this country to the other are trying to survive on starvation wages. And that's the story taking place all over America. What does living paycheck to paycheck mean? It means that every single day, millions of Americans worry about how they're going to pay their rent or their mortgage. All over the country, rents are skyrocketing. And people are wondering, what happens? What happens to me and my kids if rent goes up by 20% and I can't afford it? Where do I live? Do I have to take my kid out of school? Where do I put my kid? In worst case scenario, do I live in my car? Let's be clear, there are many people who are working today who are living in the back of their cars. How do I pay for childcare? How do I buy a decent food for my kids when the price of groceries is off the charts? What happens if I get sick, or my kid gets sick, or my mother gets sick, and I've got a $12,000 deductible and I can't afford to go to the doctor? How At the end of the month, am I going to pay my credit card bill even though I'm being charged 20 or 30% interest rates? People are worrying about simple things. What happens if my car breaks down and the guy at the repair shop says it's going to cost $1,000 and I don't have $1,000 in the bank? And if I don't have a car, how do I get to work? If I don't get to work, how do I have an income? If I don't have an income, how do I take care of my family? These are the crises that millions of Americans are experiencing today. When we look at what's going on in America, in Vermont and throughout this country, we have a major housing crisis. Here we are, the richest country on earth, 800,000 people sleeping out on the streets, and 20 million people are spending more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. Can you imagine that? You're a working person spending 50% of your income on housing. How do you have money to do anything else? And the cost of housing is soaring. Do not tell me that in a nation which could spend $1 trillion on the military, a nation that gives massive tax breaks to the rich, that we cannot build the millions of units of housing that we desperately need. So why is all of this happening? Why do we have a healthcare system that is broken? Prescription drugs that are the most expensive in the world, a housing system, education in deep trouble. So I think the bottom line of all of this, the American people, I think, are catching on. And Mr. Musk, I must thank him because he has made it very clear we are living in an oligarchic form of society. If anybody out there thinks that Mr. Musk is running around out of the goodness of his heart trying to make our government more efficient, you have not a clue as to what is going on. What these guys want to do is destroy virtually every federal program that impacts the well-being of working people. Social Security, Medicare, postal services, public education, you name it, so they can get huge tax breaks for the rich. So this is a pivotal moment in American history, and I sense that the American people have had it up to here. They are prepared to fight back. They do not want a government run by billionaires who have it all, whose greed is uncontrollable. You might think that if you had $10-20 billion, it'd be enough, kind of enough to let your family live for the next 20 generations. But it's not. For whatever reason, whatever compulsive reason they have, these guys want more and more and more. And they're prepared to destroy Social Security, Medicare, nutrition programs for hungry people in order to get even more. That, to me, is disgusting. So we're at a pivotal moment in American history. But we've had difficult moments before. And I'm confident from the bottom of my heart that if we stand together and we do not allow some right-wing extremists to divide us by the colour of our skin or our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation. If we stand together, we can save this country. We can defeat oligarchy. We can defeat the government towards authoritarianism. And in fact, we can create an economy and a government that works for all, not just a few. There it is. Speech by Bernie Sanders to the Senate, US Senate, a lone voice, it would seem, against what is seemingly becoming an oligarchic country, much like Russia, where the billionaires control politics. Go Bernie, that's all I can say. Time for another song. FM. Oh,